Hello and welcome to PMCLounge.com. This is Lounge Fever, a series dedicated to answering your questions. You can send your question to us. A lot of people tweet them to us at twitter.com/PMCLounge. Our handle is PMC Lounge on Twitter. A lot of people send emails. You can always send an email to admin@PMCLounge.com, or you can leave a comment down below in this video itself. We will definitely try to get back to you. And if the question is good enough, if the question is going to solve uh, the query of not just you, but a lot of other subscribers and a lot of other, the entire community of PMC Lounge will definitely create a video on it, just like we are doing for this query. The query here is extremely important. The question is that it came to us through an email, and the question read, in the control scope process, because we covered the scope management knowledge area, we recently covered the control scope process. So this question is around control scope process itself. So in the control scope process, as a project manager, are you controlling the project scope or the product scope? Now, I'd like to add to this question as well. Can you control both? And what exactly is the scope management knowledge area applicable to? So let's get an answer to this. Let's get started. So the question is simple. What is the scope of the control scope process? What is the scope of this process known as control scope? So does it include project work and project scope, right? The work that you do on the project, and of course the scope of your project. Or does it also include deliverables and the product scope? So we're talking about project scope and product scope. What does the control scope process actually control? That is the question here. Project work and project scope, or deliverables and product scope, or both of these, right? Now here's the thing, and you should keep this clear in your mind, that control scope process is always about the project work that the team does. So as a project manager, when you're controlling scope, when you're performing the control scope process, you are always, and it's in bold and italic for a reason so that you remember it, it is always about the project work that the team is doing, that your project team is doing, right? In fact, the entire scope management knowledge area, right? This entire knowledge area of scope management, it addresses only the project scope and not the product scope. So as a project manager in this knowledge area, all the processes in this knowledge area, by the way, we have covered scope management knowledge area in detail. I'll share the link to the playlist in the description below. Go over, learn a thing or two about scope management knowledge area. It is definitely going to help you out. So the entire scope management knowledge area, when you as a project manager perform the processes of this knowledge area, you are concerned only with the project scope. You're not concerned with the product scope. Now, we've also made a video, it's quite popular, where I talked about the difference between a project manager and a product manager. That is also going to help you understand how these two roles are different. I'll share the link in the description below for that video as well. Do check that out. It's very important video in terms of understanding this video itself, right? So as a project manager, you manage the work the project team does, not the deliverables that they create. Now, this is a very important point. This is a very important line, and I'd like to repeat it. And I would really appreciate if you do not confuse this and jump the gun right away, that how can you say a project manager is not responsible and is not does not manage the deliverable. So I'll repeat, you manage the work the project team does, right? So you're managing the work that your project team is doing. You do not manage the deliverable that they create. And it is very important to understand the difference between the two. It is very important to understand the difference between the work that your project team does and the deliverable that your project team creates. As a project manager, when you finalize the scope, when you finalize the schedule, when you finalize the cost of the project, You make sure that a piece of code should be written within certain deadline that it has, right? So you manage the work that your project team does, right? You make sure that the piece of code is written within schedule, within cost, and achieves the scope of the project, right? That is your responsibility. That work that the project team does, that is something that you manage. But do you manage that piece of code itself? Do you go in and look into that piece of code, right? And do you manage that deliverable? Of course not. You don't do that. You just manage the work that the project team does. You are not managing the deliverable that they create. That is a very delicate line between these two, the work and the deliverable. And I'd like you to pause the video here, read this line, the last sentence, twice or thrice if you're still confused, and drop in a comment if you have any questions. If you have, what are your thoughts on this line? What do you think about this? Right? So I'd like to repeat, as a project manager, you manage the work the project team does, not the deliverable that they create. But that doesn't mean that the project manager isn't bothered about the product scope, right? So, that doesn't mean that you're least bothered about what's happening with the product scope, because project scope and product scope, they are closely related. In order to attain a product scope, there could be several projects, right? And unless and until you deliver the project as per the requirements of the product, there is no possibility that the product scope is going to be achieved. So it is absolutely important for you as a project manager to make sure that you keep tab and keep track of the product scope as well, right? My last sentence in the previous slide doesn't mean that you should be least bothered about product scope. In fact, if there is a change in the scope of the project, right? If there's a change in the project scope, if you're making any change, no matter howsoever small it is, it does affect the product scope as well, right? So it is important to note that changes in project scope are going to affect are going to affect the product scope as a whole. So it is important for you to keep a tab on the product scope as well while you're managing projects, while you're delivering project after project to achieve a product scope. But it's important that you also keep tab on product scope. And just because deliverables is not something that you manage, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't even be concerned about the deliverables that are going out or the deliverables that your project is creating, right? So that's all that I had in this video. Do hit the bell icon to get notified whenever we post a new video. Hit the like button if you like this video, if you found it useful, if you learned something new. Check us out on our social media. Our handle is PMC Lounge on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And as always, do check out the website pmclounge.com, your number one free resource for PMP and other project management certifications, as well as project management industry information. Thank you.